Hello and welcome to the Times of India. You're watching Global Pulse with me, Neha Khanna. Donald Trump has completed 6 months in office, and we're asking tonight, is the 45th and 47th US president an agent of disruption or chaos? Let's recap for you some of the big events, policies, decisions, and controversies that have marked or marred, whichever way you look at it, Trump's first 6 months in the Oval Office in his second term. Many would argue that from the very beginning, the Trump administration has been defined by turmoil, inconsistency, and controversy that have shaken not only American politics but the world at large. Let's start with the infamous Trump tariffs that have hit the global economy hard. Raised costs for consumers into global markets. And it's not just countries like India, China, and Canada that are in the line of fire. American farmers and manufacturers too have been caught in the crossfire as they struggle with the 2024 presidential election. But a few weeks ago, the two fell out following a very public feud over some of Trump's policies, including the big, beautiful bill on government spending and taxation that's meant to be a landmark legislation for Trump. Since then, Trump and Musk have traded insults on social media, inspiring a million memes. Another major issue that has had far-reaching implications is Trump's immigration policy and tighter border controls. we've seen a massive crackdown and countrywide raids on immigrants. Scores of them have been arrested, put in handcuffs, separated from their families, placed in detention centers, and in many cases, deported. The crackdown sparked massive riots on the streets of Los Angeles and elsewhere, leading to unprecedented scenes of chaos and mayhem. On the domestic front, the ongoing Epstein sex scandal continues to cast a dark shadow on the Trump presidency. Revelations about the late convicted sex offender and pedophile Jeffrey Epstein's connections to powerful figures have exposed a disturbing undercurrent of corruption and impunity, some with troubling ties to the Trump administration. The White House's failure to address these allegations seriously has raised questions about accountability at the highest levels and triggered massive outrage over what many believe is a massive cover-up. On foreign policy, the Trump administration's approach has been downright reckless, according to many experts. The recent US strikes against Iran and its nuclear program were a dangerous escalation that brought the world to the brink of wider conflict. Critics have dubbed it a hasty and provocative act that risked destabilizing an already fraught Middle East and dragging the US into another prolonged war. Ironically, one of Trump's biggest election promises was that he would end the Israel-Hamas war and the Russia-Ukraine war as soon as he was re-elected. That has so far proven to be a pipe dream. And compounding the chaos and confusion are Trump's baffling flip-flops on Russia and its president. From praising Vladimir Putin, calling him a genius, and saying he wants peace, to terming his claims bullshit. From humiliating Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during a meeting at the Oval Office in front of world media and threatening to cut off aid to Ukraine, to pledging more funds and weapons to Kiev. The US president's erratic behavior and endless U-turns have left allies and adversaries alike questioning America's reliability. Many have argued that it also undermines the country's global influence. And then there are Trump's repeated and brazen claims that he ended the India-Pakistan conflict in May this year and brokered a ceasefire between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, thereby preventing a full-blown war. A claim categorically rejected by India. But that has not prevented Trump from saying again and again, I ended the war. I never get any credit. I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. And right on cue, we saw the Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir, who was hosted by Trump at the White House, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu nominating Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, a move that has been the subject of many jokes around the world. Many have asked, is this statesmanship or unabashed self-aggrandizement? The list of controversies sparked by Trump is a long one. In just 6 months, the US president has managed to alienate allies, confuse foes, undermine key economic sectors, and distract Americans with scandal and chaos. Not to mention the deep divide we see for the very first time within MAGA, the movement founded by Trump. Some of his own staunchest supporters are revolting against Trump over the Epstein files. He has called them stupid and foolish weaklings. Many say it's now MAGA versus Trump. Of course, Trump thinks he is the finest president in American history. He posted on social media, "1 year ago, our country was dead with almost no hope of revival. Today, the USA is the hottest and most respected country anywhere in the world. Happy anniversary." That was Donald Trump on Truth Social. A new CBS News poll puts Trump's approval rating at 42% with his disapproval at 58%. The poll indicates that while the president has seen his approval decline overall since taking office, he still remains quite popular among Republicans who give the president, in some cases, an 89% approval rating. A Gallup poll conducted in June says 40% approve of Trump, 57% disapprove. The Economist YouGov poll conducted this month says 41% approve of the job Trump has done in the last 6 months, while 55% disapprove, marking the largest share of Americans disapproving of his job performance so far in Trump's second term. Suffice it to say, the first 6 months of Trump's presidency have been marked by instability and erratic decision-making. The question is Trump an agent of disruption or chaos? And can he regain control over the narrative and his support base? What can we expect over the next 3.5 years of the Trump presidency? Always expect the unexpected from the unconventional billionaire president is what both his friends and critics will probably say.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
the world.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What are you
You're
speaking about?
gambling with
What are you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. That was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know. We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless. An immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed, so I'm very proud of that. Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best things. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work. The Democrats are good for nothing other than these hoaxes. They're bad.
Ma'am can't hear me. Ma'am, cutting to you. Cutting to you. 3, 2, 1. Cue.
What do our panel of experts make of it? Let's find out. Joining me on Global Pulse tonight is Raymond Vickery from the United States. Raymond Vickery is former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Vickery, thank you so much for joining me on Global Pulse tonight. Also with us on the show is Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. As always, great to have you with us on the show, sir. Raymond Vickery, if I could start with you. From sparking global trade wars to his crackdown on immigration, from his flip-flops on Putin to launching attacks on Iran, and now, of course, the Epstein storm that's raging. Most would agree that the last 6 months of the Trump presidency have been marked by erratic behavior and a fair deal of chaos. So I'm going to ask you tonight, how do Americans view the last 6 months, or shall we say the first 6 months of the Trump presidency? Is he an agent of disruption or chaos?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I don't think there's any question that President Trump thrived on chaos. Is his modus operandi. It's useful to him to create chaos because it creates a condition of fear. Most people are transaction. What's in it for me right now at this time? I think that the American public is gradually waking up to this. Unfortunately, there is a MAGA base which agrees on the substance of what he's doing. That is, that the rich should richer, that their problems are all created by some sort of migrants, that they're not as rich as they should be, and that things are terrible. This has been what would-be authoritarians have thrived on since time immemorial. It's a very, very difficult time in the United States, and it is imperative that the great democracies around the world, like India and Western Europe, Japan, Australia, step forward to try to provide some semblance of respect for the rule of law, for institutions, for what will happen down the road rather than what happens to favor President Trump at this particular moment.
Okay, interesting. You say that Trump has always thrived on chaos, but many would argue that at the moment he's in a spot of bother over the Epstein files. Let me now go across to Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. Ambassador Sibal, we always knew that Trump was transactional and unpredictable, but he's now taken his erratic behavior to a whole new level in his second term in office. Let's examine his foreign policy closely. That's something, of course, that you understand better than most others. Now, he has sparked global wars, trade wars, with his sky-high tariffs. He has had a number of flip-flops on Putin in the Russia-Ukraine war, calling him a genius who wants peace one day, to then saying that what he's saying is quote-unquote bullshit. This is a man who had promised to end the ongoing wars in the world, and then he goes ahead and launches attacks on Iran and its nuclear program. And then, of course, there is this whole story about the India-Pakistan conflict. Trump insists on taking credit for the ceasefire that was announced between the two countries, a claim that India has repeatedly rejected, but that hasn't stopped Donald Trump from saying, I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. On balance, how do you see Trump's 6 months in office, and in particular, his foreign policy?
Well, as you've been saying, it caused a lot of discussions, bordering in some senses on chaos, because the long-term implications of what he's doing be far-reaching, because countries are looking at what America is doing in order to subvert the global systems and this trade or institutions, and they learn their lessons and will then pursue policies which, as much as possible, would reduce their reliance on the United States of America. So it's a losing game for America. US goes down its path. And it appears that successor government may find it difficult to draw back some of the core policies that has unleashed. Now, look at the way, for example, we talk about BRICS. BRICS actually began as a kind of an alternative to the G7 dominated global system, or in what we saw of the Soviet Union of US unilateral. BRICS has progressed steadily, but now he's taking on BRICS and treating BRICS as a threat to the United States of America, and threatening that he will put tariffs on BRICS countries, which includes, yeah, of course, if they challenge the Supreme Court of the United States of America, he very afraid. He's concerned that there will be a move towards de-dollarization, which would affect the position of the United States in the global financial system, and knows that this will actually greatly undermine global influence of the United States. But on the other hand, because of this policy of sanctions, of weaponizing the United States control over the global financial system, uh, weaponizing the dollar, he is giving all the incentive to other countries to move out of the as much as is feasible and possible. It's not as if this has been the intention of BRICS country from the start. Even today, India is not supporting any move towards de-dollarization as such. But yes, countries would like to be able to deal with their own national currencies as much as possible. Mercosur in Latin America is dealing in their own currencies. The European Union deals as the euro. Japan has its yen. The Britain has its pound. Uh, India is trying also to see if we can use the Indian rupee in our transactions with some of our close partners. But this is not necessarily an issue of de-dollarization as such. India, for example, our biggest partner is the United States of America. So how can we talk about de-dollarization with a country with which we trade so much in goods and services? Uh, but on the other hand, we have to then see the signals that are coming from United States and Europe. They threw out Russia from SWIFT. They have
Okay.
prevented settlement in dollars of less trade between India and Russia. Why should we be punished for whatever problems United States and Europe has with Russia, that we can't actually deal normally in trade matters with Russia? And we are compelled to use other ways to make the payment system, which have become very difficult.
Right.
So the thing is that uh, Trump, by other things that he has done, walking out of the WHO, for example, much more importantly, walking out of the climate change agreement, which means that all that has been discussed over so many COP meetings will be able, or whatever they.
Just today, Trump has pulled the United States out of UNESCO.
Yeah,
Clearly,
yeah.
those controversial decisions continue. But how are these going to pan out? So I'll come back to you in just a moment. Let me take this back to Raymond Vickery. Raymond Vickery, talking about some of the biggest domestic issues that have come up in the last 6 months during the Trump presidency. We've seen how close to 300,000 federal employees have lost their jobs in that cost-cutting spree. We saw unprecedented scenes of violence and mayhem on the streets of Los Angeles and elsewhere during the massive crackdown on immigrants. But now you actually see a major political storm swirling around Donald Trump over the Epstein files. Would you agree that he seems to have created a fair bit of trouble for himself? Because this is the first time that we're actually seeing some of the most powerful and high profile MAGA figures who've thus far steadfastly supported Donald Trump actually taking him on. He's gone to the extent of calling them stupid and foolish weaklings, saying, I don't even want their support anymore. And some are saying it's now MAGA versus Trump. What's going on here? Do you believe that there has been an erosion of Trump's support base in the last 6 months, especially over Epstein files?
Well, I think President Trump is being hoisted on his own petard, as they say. The modus operandi, in addition to chaos for Donald Trump, has been one of disregard for women's rights, for sexual innuendo. He's been photographed many times with Epstein and young women. Indeed, I can remember his being on talk shows, really bragging about his extramarital activities. At one point, he said that he was uh, equivalent to Vietnam fighter because of the danger that he was facing from his sexual activities outside of his marital rights. So this is nothing new for Donald Trump. The question is whether or not it's finally going to come home to roost for him, because he has used uh, the conspiracy theories built around Epstein to try to attack Democrats, saying that they were pedophiles and that they should be thrown in jail.
Mhm.
But it turns out, of course, that now that he's found apparently that he's mentioned in some of the papers and some of the lists, he says, well, there's nothing here to see. This is the kind of about face that even MAGA supporters uh, often have difficulty in swallowing. So, yes, it is damaging to him, but it remains to be seen whether or not the MAGA supporters will be, as he has said in the past, that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue in New York, and they would still be with him. Unfortunately, there is a minority in the United States who flock to this sort of strongman approach, the swashbuckling effect. I do think, though, that at this point he has gone too far, and that this will continue to dog him. But the basic questions of values, of how you have respect for institutions rather than just transactions, is the major question, and the area in which damage is being done, perhaps irreparably, to the American society and our American system of government. Uh, Internationally, as Secretary Sibal has pointed out, we have lost the leadership position. Now, some, even in India, are saying, well, that's great. We wanted to bring down the United States. But I would suggest that if you want to bring down the United States based upon the actions of Trump, that India and others need to step up and be willing to act on values to try to build peace and prosperity throughout the world. But domestically, I believe that more and more people are seeing that there is not reality to the kind of scenario that President Trump is painting. Everything is not all right in the United States. Inflation is up. Uh, Immigrants are being kept out of the field to be able to pick the agricultural goods which are needed,
Mhm.
the kinds of investments which need to be made to prevent climate change. We're having terrible floods
Yes.
throughout the United States. He's talked about and has implemented cuts in the Federal Emergency Management Agency and elsewhere.
Mhm.
And you can only say that the emperor has magnificent clothes for so long before somebody says, wait a minute, that emperor doesn't have clothes on. And I believe that's the direction in which the president is headed.
All right, some interesting points there. Are the chickens coming home to roost? Could the Epstein files prove to be Trump's undoing? And also, a lot of his decisions, many have argued, seem to have actually undermined the standing of the United States and its influence in the world. Let me take this back to Ambassador Kanwal. Ambassador Kanwal Sibal, you know, there are many in India who believe that Donald Trump was far friendlier to India and to Prime Minister Modi in his first term than he has been in the first 6 months of his second term as the US president. Not only has he sparked trade wars with a lot of countries, including India, but the constant threats coming from the Trump administration. Just yesterday, for instance, we heard Senator Lindsey Graham threatening India and China, saying we're going to ruin your economies if you don't stop buying cheap oil from Russia. But that apart, how do you really think Trump has dealt with India in the last 6 months? Would you agree that that approach really does leave a lot to be desired? At the end of the day, these are two of the largest democracies in the world that we're talking about. Two countries that have taken their strategic relationship forward in the last few years. But I'm not sure that the recent Modi visit to the White House had the kind of outcome that India was probably hoping for.
Well, actually, I think it began very well indeed, because within 20 days or whatever of his taking over, Prime Minister Modi went there and signed a very substantive statement, which, uh, in fact, resulted in some very positive outcomes for India, in the sense that much of the core agenda that we had developed with the United States during the Biden administration was owned by the new administration, including the ICET and what have you. Um, and Modi was treated with a great deal of personal warmth, shown a lot of respect. And it was agreed that some kind of interim trade deal will be signed uh, in the following days, and a broader agreement will be signed when President Trump was expected to come to India for the Quads summit. So it began quite well, though Trump continued to, even when Prime Minister was there, continued to target India as the tariff king uh, and put pressure on India to open up the markets, etc., etc. When it came to uh, tariffs on various countries, as you know, he he announced 28% tariffs on India, but they were held in abeyance. And I do not know if today we are on the verge of finding some kind of a mini trade deal or an interim trade deal or not, because the information on this is contradictory. Uh, but nevertheless, uh, we have to wait till what happens. Trump may give us give everybody further time to see if some kind of a trade deal can be signed. So the point I'm making is that it did not begin off well, but what has happened is subsequently Trump on the India issue, on this operation Sindoor, on reopening the Kashmir issue by proposing mediation between India and Pakistan, and insist on conflict, which could have degenerated into a nuclear conflict. He's great. He has greatly harmed the not only the atmosphere but also the substance of India-US, because India has to draw some lessons from this, that he is gratuitously undermining undermined the relationship between the two countries when there was no reason for him to do so. Why does he, after all this whole business about aviation, this old hat? Nobody's talking about it. Suddenly he wants to talk about internationalize the issue. Then on the substance, and then on the war itself, there was absolutely no question of degenerating into a nuclear conflict, but yet he's talking about how he prevented this from doing so, which means that he's actually giving a boost to Pakistan's largest strategy and tried strategy. That any conflict with India can result in Pakistan threatening a nuclear conflict and hence putting pressure on India to desist from taking any robust action against terrorism that emanates from Pakistan. And
Right.
then what is actually quite galling is that he invites the Field Marshal of Pakistan to a private lunch at the White House and talks about the great leadership that Pakistan has and equates that leadership and the Munir Fellow, the Prime Minister of India, with India as a democratic country, is totally insensitive to the kind of political signals that he is sending, and he is giving a boost to Pakistan. Now there is some concern that if he does come for the
He
war,
hosted,
uh,
the
they
Pakistan
will
Army
also
chief,
take a visit to
Asim
Pakistan.
Munir, who India strongly believes was the architect of the Pahalgam terror attack and multiple other attacks that have been perpetrated against India. And he calls him a great guy. He was treated as a state guest. I mean, clearly, Trump has done enough and more to undermine the India-US relationship in the last 6 months.
But let me make a point, though, which is that we should not feel paranoid about it. If he had been singled out for this kind of event, I would say yes. India is an exceptional case and gone out of his way to diminish India. Look at the manner in which he's treating in Europe and especially Japan. He's imposed 25% tariffs on Japan to say that they need now to have more independent forces and not rely on the United States as much as they've done in the past. Now, this calls into question the whole Quad business and everything else. But in Europe, you can see what's happening in Europe. He's placed them out altogether. He's tried to keep them out of any negotiation that he's had with Russia, and he's forced them to increase their defense expenditure to 5%. They don't have the money to do so.
Right.
So he, look
But
at Lula.
let's not forget the bailouts that have come Pakistan's way from, let's say, the IMF. It couldn't have happened without the US signing
Yeah.
off on it, without Donald Trump
But
signing off on it.
look at Brazil. He's imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil,
Yes.
when actually US has the trade surplus in Brazil. So the whole logic of tariffs that we've been expounding has been violated in the case of Brazil. He's punishing Brazil because, according to him, he's cheating out of that,
Yes.
which means he's openly interfering in the affairs of Brazil. So these are dangerous initiatives that he has taken in the foreign policy. Highly disrespectful.
Absolutely. I think
And this
it
will
can.
leave a very
We can safely say that Trump has been very insensitive to India through his actions in the last 6 months. He has irked India on a number of occasions, and he's hankering after a Nobel Peace Prize. He keeps insisting he ended the war between India and Pakistan, and he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. The poor man, he says he never gets credit for anything. All right, let me take this back to Raymond Vickery. Raymond Vickery, the American president says, I'm the finest president in the history of the United States of America. Today, America is the hottest and the most respected country in the world. We were dead just a year ago with no hope of revival. Today, we are the most respected country in the world. Many would beg to differ. But really, the question that I want to put to Raymond Vickery is this. Do you believe that Donald Trump can regain control over the narrative? Because he really seems to be on a sticky wicket right now, vis-a-vis the Epstein files, vis-a-vis his ongoing war with MAGA. How do you really see this panning out? Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but polls suggest that his approval ratings have most certainly dropped since he took office in January. Currently, they're in the low 40s. How do you see that?
Well, I think that President Trump is in difficulty. You know, we have a separation of powers constitution in which the executive is to be checked by both the judicial and legislative branches. And in spite of President Trump's attempt to alter that system is still here. The court, particularly particularly lower courts, time and time again, are ruling against President Trump. Unfortunately, in 1 out of 3 cases, he is telling his administration simply to ignore the courts. But the judicial branch and restraints there are going to be a difficulty for President Trump in trying to carry out his transactional approach to public policy. Second, we have elections here in Virginia, where I'm sitting this year. The gubernatorial election is pitting people, a candidate who is very strongly Trump against one who is a Democrat. And the same thing is going to happen in New Jersey. And then we have midterms coming up next year. And the signs are that the Republicans are going to lose the House of Representatives. So it is very much hopeful that our system is going to maintain the integrity necessary to promote democracy here. But I would say, just to talk in
All right. We will come back to you in just a moment, Raymond Vickery. We seem to have lost his line there. But as we wrap up this discussion, I want to ask my guests one question. So I'll start with Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. Ambassador Sibal, where Trump is concerned, you can only expect the unexpected. But I'll ask you to stick your neck out for us and tell us what you think we can expect from the remaining 3.5 years of the Trump presidency. It seems like a really long time given how much chaos we've witnessed already in the last 6 months. What's that one big prediction that you can make? What do you think Trump is likely to do next?
Very difficult to say, but he'll cause more disruption. And unless representatives in the elections that are there on the anvil, and his wings are clipped a little bit, he'll go down the road that he is going. He is, if I may say so, he's unstable, because no leader talks so irresponsibly as he does. And you cannot build a relationship locally based simply on transactionalism. It's not a business relationship all the time. So many other dimensions to relationship between countries, and especially the United States of America, which is the most powerful country in the world, and other countries. The basis has to be a sense of respect for others, treating them equally, treating fairly, treating them with a kind of some kind of a balanced approach into cognizance their national interests rather than coercing them into doing exactly what you want. And this whole business of lobbying for a peace prize, I mean, you don't do that. I mean, if you achieve something, then there will be people who will offer you that. But he says that he deserves 4 or 5 Nobel Peace Prizes, and is desperately looking for opportunities
Yes.
to address that thing. So I think we're going to have a very rough time. It continues for the next 3.5 years.
Okay, are we in for another 3.5 years of global chaos and turmoil? Well, in your assessment, it's unlikely that Donald Trump will get the Nobel Peace Prize, something that he's really hankering after. But I'll give the final word to Raymond Vickery, who's back with us. Raymond Vickery, stick your neck out for us. We still have 3.5 years of Trump to go. What, according to you, is that one big thing that he could do next? Also, do you believe that the Republicans are in a bit of trouble ahead of the midterms next year? Some say Donald Trump doesn't care because he knows he can't run for office again. What's your take?
Well, I think that the tiger is not going to change his stripes. Donald Trump has got where he is by attack, dissembling and outright untruth. And so you're not going to see a change in that. What I predict is that the system of the United States, constitutional system, which has served us for some 250 years now, is going to act as a restraint.
Mm-hmm.
The midterm elections will not turn out well for President Trump. He will not have the free hand in the Congress that he has had. And I believe that even though he has a majority of the Supreme Court, that people like my former partner, John Roberts, are going to step up and say enough is enough. I do think it is extremely important for India and those in the United States who are interested in the U.S.-India relationship to emphasize the importance of values in the relationship and to step forward and step up now to defend democracy and democratic values. Unless the India government and the United States will step up and cooperate, then the international system is going to be irreparably damaged. But I believe that the system is going to hold, that the tiger will not change its stripes, but that he'll be returned to his cage.
All right. The tiger will not change his stripes, but, Trump will do well to remember that while he may not be able to run for office for a third term, he certainly should be concerned about the midterms due next year and the fact that he needs to pass some very important legislation in Congress. On that note, Raymond, Vickery, Ambassador Kanwal, Sibal, thank you so much for joining me on Global Pulse tonight and sharing with us your perspective on 6 months of the second Trump presidency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, it is a wrap on Global Pulse tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Of course, Trump believes he's the best president the United States has ever had. The White House recently called him Superman Trump. He's also said, I was earlier the hunted, now I'm the hunter. But just how well is the Trump presidency really going? 6 months. So far, 3.5 years to go. You decide. Thanks for watching. This is me, Neha Khanna, signing off. Thank you.